Well, good afternoon, everyone. Sure wish I could be there with you in person for this meeting, but circumstances are such that I can't. My name is Russ. I work for the United States Department of Agriculture Agricultural Research Service in Morris, Minnesota. Today, I'm going to be presenting a piece of research that is focused on improving the management for pennycress establishment in corn and soybean systems. And it's actually part of a larger project we refer to as the I Prefer project, which is focused on overall developing pennycress as a cash cover crop for the upper Midwest Corn Belt region in the United States. As you can see, there's many folks here involved, even in this piece of work. So I give them credit as well. And I'm just the one doing the presentation. So pennycress, I'm not going to spend much time here because I think most of the people who are at this meeting, especially in the oilseed division, are already familiar with pennycress, but it is a mustard species, belongs to the Brassicaceae family, and is primarily being developed for industrial uses for biofuels and bioproducts. We're working closely with a company in the Corn Belt region, upper Midwest, called Crests, and they're helping to kick off commercialization of pennycress across the Midwest. I also want to point out too that there's quite a bit of breeding work that's being done in the United States to further domesticate pennycress and improve pennycress lines. And now there's not only non-edible forms, which is the wild type, but also edible form accessions with edible forms of oil as well. The non-edible ones, of course, are the ones we're developing for industrial uses, which are high in erucic acid and glucosinolates. So pennycress, you can kind of think of it as rapeseed and canola now. So where we're fitting pennycress into corn and soybean systems, we're using it as a cash cover crop. So we're growing it between corn and soybean. And pennycress commercialization, we're targeting this for the upper Midwest, the Corn Belt region, in the map that is in the upper right-hand part here. And the circle area is where we're targeting commercial production of pennycress. So the way in which this works is to either plant it into or after corn, but we want to try to get in by mid-September to early October to get good establishment and good winter survivability of pennycress, which does have very good freeze tolerance. And it begins flowering very early in the spring, early for us, that is, maybe not early for Italy, but early for us, late April, early May. And then it matures quite rapidly and is ready to harvest by early June, sometimes even as early as late May. And that allows us enough time to double crop soybean, to grow a crop of soybean after pennycress. So it's a double crop system, and basically producing 3 crops in 2 years rather than 2 crops, summer annuals in each of those years. But there are challenges with corn. Typical full season hybrids that are grown in the Corn Belt region are oftentimes harvested too late in autumn to allow good establishment of cover crops, or pennycress for that matter too, because it comes off too late and the soil is beginning to get cold, starting to freeze before we get into winter. We have looked at ways of interseeding pennycress into standing corn, and that has worked quite well in terms of getting good establishment. But after that corn is harvested, there's a lot of residue that falls on the plants and suppresses their growth. And we don't get good spring growth. It often leads to poor yields, as you can see in the graph to the right. So the objective in this experiment that I'll be showing you results for was to use early maturing corn hybrids, comparing that to a typical full season hybrid for regions in the Corn Belt region, to try to get that corn off earlier and thus directly drill pennycress after corn harvest into that residue. The current agronomic management system, which is in the top rectangle here, is to simply grow corn and then harvest that by mid-October into November. And then usually the soil will be fallow, we'll lay fallow after that, and then plant soybean the next spring. So the soil is susceptible to soil erosion and unwanted loss of nutrients from the soil as well. So with the proposed agronomic management using pennycress, we want to get that on there as a cover to help prevent soil erosion and loss of nutrients. But for the objective of this experiment, we're using earlier corn hybrids to try to get that corn off by mid to late September, direct drill our pennycress, hopefully harvest that by early June, and then double crop soybean after that. And the overarching goal here is to keep continuous living cover on the landscape and intensify production. So there were 4 field sites used in this study, 2 in the northern part of the Corn Belt in Minnesota and 2 in the southern part of the Corn Belt in Illinois and Ohio. And because of that, different suites of corn relative maturity hybrids were used. In the northern part, a 95-day corn is a common full season hybrid. And in the southern part, 113-day corn is a common hybrid, full season hybrid grown there. And then we sequentially work backward from there to go with earlier corn, all the way down to 76-day corn in the northern portion of the Corn Belt and 95-day corn in the southern part. I also want to point out too, our check treatment here was a silaging corn. That's taken off in early September. Most of the residue is taken off. We know from past experience that we direct drill pennycress into that, we get really good stand establishment and good yields as well. So that was our check treatment here. So in the first year, these are results from our first year, using 76 to 86-day corn at the 2 northern sites, we were able to get corn off by mid to late September. In the southern portion, using a 95-day and 100-day corn, we're able to get that corn off in about the same time period, mid-September to early October. So one of the things, of course, that we're looking at here is what are the yield trade-offs? If we're going with earlier corn, are we sacrificing corn yield? But maybe getting the pennycress in earlier, we can get better establishment, better yields, and economically make up some of that difference. But what we found is that both northern and southern sites, but first looking at the northern sites, which is the graph on the left, 86-day corn at the Rosemont site, which is the brown or oranges / bars, gave every bit as good a yield as a 95-day corn, no difference there. And even at the Morris site, which is the blue bars, the 82 and 86-day corn were a little bit less than 95-day corn, but they weren't statistically different. And if we go to the southern part of the Corn Belt, which is the graph on the right-hand side, as you can see, there was no difference between the 95-day corn and the 113-day corn hybrid. I do want to point out at the Ohio site, the very low yields were due to severe drought there. But because of that, there also wasn't a whole lot of corn residue there after the corn was harvested, which actually shows up quite well in the autumn pennycress stands. So these are pennycress stands in autumn after harvesting the corn and then direct drilling pennycress. We have plant density on the y-axis and our maturity group corn treatments on the x-axis. So the earlier was taken off, the earlier pennycress was planted. And you can see it pretty much followed our hypothesis of pretty much both the northern and southern sites, in that there was better pennycress or more plants emerged, better stands with earlier removal of corn, earlier planting of pennycress. And particularly, as you can see, Ohio on the right-hand side, which are those green / bars, stands were quite high there. But again, there wasn't a whole lot of corn residue on the field either because of the low corn yields. But as you see, if you go out to the right of those graphs, where the late maturity, regular full season maturity corn was removed, there wasn't much, and then pennycress planted after that. We didn't see much emergence there at any of the sites. But spring pennycress stands, the trend kind of reverses here. We did get some overwintering loss of pennycress, which is relatively typical. But if we look at both of the northern sites in the spring and the Illinois site at the southern portion of the Corn Belt, now we see actually the plant populations were higher with the later removal of corn and later seeding. And I just want to point out here that was primarily due to spring emergence. That was a primary reason for that. There was a lot of spring emergence of pennycress at those sites. Whereas if you look at Ohio on the graph to the right, the spring stands pretty much same trend as the autumn stand, and that's because most of those pennycress plants emerged in autumn. So when we look at yields, then for the northern sites, that higher pennycress stand establishment due to more spring emergence translated into higher pennycress yields too, as we went from earlier maturing corn to later maturing corn, or earlier planting data pennycress to later planting of pennycress. Generally, those yields increased. And one thing I do want to point out is that the silage check treatment, pretty much at all sites, was usually always higher than the treatments that were planted after grain corn. As you can see, Ohio, where most of those plants emerged in the fall, the yield still followed that same trend. So it did follow our hypothesis there, where it didn't necessarily at the two southern sites. And just quickly, I want to point out oil too. We did see a general increasing trend in oil content of pennycress with later seeding of pennycress, or later removal of corn, later planting. So in summary, earlier CRM corn didn't necessarily sacrifice grain yield, except for the ultra early 76-day corn in the northern sites. And earlier pennycress sowing with earlier corn removal did help improve autumn establishment. Spring stands varied though, but that was primarily due to spring emergence, which translated into yield as well. And even after harvest, corn residue still impacts pennycress seed yields. You can see that in the difference between pennycress yields in the silage treatment or check treatment versus those after grain corn. So we do have studies that are looking at managing that corn residue to help improve establishment as well. And that concludes my talk. So thank you very much.